Hello and you're very welcome to another edition of the JMac Podcast. I'm John McMahon, and of course this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website out for all your retro gear needs and wants. And today I'm joined by a good Monaghan man, Declan Brennan. So it's good to kind of have that Monaghan mix. He's the first Monaghan man I've got on the podcast. So Declan's in good form. How are you?
Very good, John. Thank you.
Happy days. And how's life? We're after seeing the Ulster Championship draw. So are you happy with who Monaghan got?
Yeah, I suppose, as long as you don't get the first, say, Tyrone or Donegal down, them sort of teams, Cavan would have been a hard one again. So I suppose to be happy enough to play for Monaghan.
Yeah, definitely, and I suppose it's probably favourable enough in us. We got Tyrone ourselves, so it'll be definitely exciting, and definitely one I think the Cavan lads will cherish. And I suppose how's life with yourself, Declan? Obviously in these COVID times, and how's the last year and a bit been for yourself personally?
Not too bad. I suppose it's well documented that I've had health problems with depression, etc. But thanks be to God, I was in hospital there for about 11 or 12 weeks there just after Christmas, and I have to say I'm in a good place at the minute, and I'm managing my health the best I can. I'm exercising every day. I'm taking medication. I do all them things and talk when I need to talk. Unfortunately, I have clinical depression, which is a wee bit different than ordinary depression, and it's just something I have to live with. And for a long time, I suppose I couldn't accept it more so than anything else. So at this stage now, I sort of my life reels around it, as in other words, that I try and do the positive things and be involved in the things that I like doing, rather than taking myself into places I don't want to be.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. And I suppose it's kind of like anything else. Like, has the COVID? Do you feel maybe, obviously, with everyone not much going on, and you can't really go to a game, you can't even go to a coffee shop, nothing. Like, do you think that it's maybe kind of, did it ever get a bit worse for you throughout the COVID, like the depression, or has it always been something?
Well, no, I have had problems with depression, but I have to say the COVID didn't help, because I wasn't mixing and mingling with my friends. And as you say, not going to games, not involved in football, keeping your mind busy, because your mind goes overactive when you have depression and you think of all the possible worst things that you could be doing, and it just gets on top of you.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's important to kind of talk up about it, I suppose. And like, do you feel, obviously the services that's out there at the minute, Declan? I suppose that people kind of say that it's easier to get various substances than it is to get help within this country, Declan. So do you feel there's enough in this country to help the likes of yourself in support services?
Well, I was working out at St Patrick's Hospital in Dublin, Dr. Curry, and I found her very good. I would have depression now about 15, longer actually, 17 years. And I would have been with Dr. Curry for about 10 years. Dr. McGinty in Monaghan Town, the GP, has been very good to me and a great source of comfort whenever I needed him, and knew me inside out and knew the buttons to press. I suppose since that, I have moved to the Monaghan Cavan Health services. And I have to say, the service I've received from them is second to none. They've made themselves available no end, and they've covered all angles and made sure that I'm feeling as well as I can do.
Yeah, Jesus, great to hear, and hopefully all will go well for you, and that everything lift as well. And I suppose I can ask all my guests as well, Declan, like, has all this kind of COVID changed your perspective on a lot of stuff? Because, like, at the end of the day, I don't think we're probably in as much of a rush as we are, and it's probably a rat race when things are normal. So has it changed your perspective on life, Declan?
Balance. It's all about balance. We need to all get a balance between work and play. Do you know what I mean? And it was all work, go. And I'd say everybody's in the same situation now, that we'll have a better balance to life as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. And I suppose, can we kind of touch on to your success? We were talking about it off air. Great success with club teams, Clontarf, Emmy Vale, and you're alluding to me, you're the youngest manager to win championships with them. So I suppose we can touch on to Clontarf first. Declan, a great club down there in Monaghan, the home of the great Conor McManus. And I suppose trying to touch on the success you have with Clontarf.
Well, I suppose how I got into management was I broke my leg and ankle, compound fracture, and I was unable to continue my career. I played County Mayo, County under 21, and I was on the Monaghan panel at that stage. But I broke my leg and ankle, and I sort of wanted to keep involved, so I got involved in coaching and management. And I was only 22 years of age, and I took over Clonturbert's senior team. They were intermediate at that stage, and we won the intermediate that year. We went up into 1992. We won the senior league when we went up senior. 93, we had a situation where we got to the county final. We were beat by Scotstown by a point. And 94, we got over the line and beat Dunamine in the final after beating Blaney in the semi-final. I suppose so. They were really, really exciting years. The 94 journey was unbelievable because that particular year we got to the Ulster Club final and Balahi beat us in an Ulster Club final, and they went on and were beaten by Kilmacrud Crokes in the All-Ireland final. So we were up there, we were knocking at the door, and we were just very unfortunate on the day that we didn't get over the line. Balahi beat us by a point in Armagh.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose, like, obviously winning them titles at such a young age as well, Declan. Like, and obviously you were alluding to like the injury you got, so that probably led you into your management career. How special of a feeling was it to win at such a young age?
I didn't know. I honestly didn't know what I was involved in, because it's only when I look back now and saying I was absolutely mad in the head to be taking on a managing job at that particular age. And if you said it to anybody else, it'd say that man hasn't got sense. But I enjoyed every minute of it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I was very fortunate, no matter where I went or whatever club I was with, or university team, I had good players and good management team around me, which left my job a lot easier. That's the key to any moving forward in any sport. And I suppose getting to the top, you need to have good people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's probably a lot of responsibility at that age as well, Declan. And I suppose, like, is it something you kind of like approach with open arms and kind of dealing with the players' problems? Because at the end of the day, you're probably the same age as most of the players, so obviously you were probably maybe sharing some of their same frustration. So how did you manage kind of dealing with the lads and kind of working with them?
Well, I suppose that year in 91, when I took over Clonturbert, my uncle Benny was with me as a selector. People would know Benny Moan, the great Benny Moan. He was a great footballer and great inside information for me to have along at my side at that particular time. And I suppose we had a situation where, like all clubs at that particular time, there was an alcohol problem. And how we dealt with it going forward was, I suppose, the difference between success and not success. And I suppose we had a situation where I said, listen, boys, there's no alcohol coming into such and such a game. And what happened then was we picked a team accordingly. And the night before, actually, we played, we had to be in the local bar, and theirs was 2 to 3 me players sitting at the top table with a couple of pints in front, very little, but I had said, listen, lads, there's no drink going on. I never slept that night. And we're going to have to make changes. I remember having to ring Benny and say, oh, should we let them off this time? And I says, no, we can't let them off. So there's 2, if anybody knows Clonturbert's dressing rooms, there's 2 doors in it. One that goes out the field and one that comes in off the roadway. And I stood beside the one that was beside the field, and because reason being is I was announcing the team and I knew that there could be a wee bit of an uproar about dropping boys.
Yeah.
So as soon as the team was announced, I was out through the door like a rocket. That gave me one by 15 points, and I never looked back since.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeez, without a doubt. And I suppose it's interesting, that kind of drinking culture you're after alluding to as well, Declan. And I suppose people kind of would be wondering about it these days, and county lads not being able to maybe have a few drinks after game. What do you kind of make of the drinking culture within the GA at the minute, Declan?
I think it just needs to be managed. I don't think that there's a situation where boys should go without drink for week in, week out. You need to express yourself. You need to have a bit of a balance. You need to have a bit of a life. yes, you see in the rugby world where they celebrate the winnings and doesn't do them any harm. And I think from a Gaelic point of view, I think we need to be easy on here, Tiger. We're getting towards a professional game. If we don't slow up soon, it's going to annoy more players, and we're going to lose players as we're going forward. You see players dropping out as it is. Do you know what I mean? For different reasons, been tired of the game mentally and physically. So we just need to watch what direction we head in.
Yeah, geez, without a shadow of a doubt. And the four senior championships you won with Clontarf, series going, and obviously, as I alluded to, the home of Desi Moan and Conor McManus, two absolutely brilliant players, as we well know. Great times in the club, but four not to be laughed at.
No, but I had great players. That was the second in 2009, 2010. We won 2 championships, and you had Desi Moan, you had John Paul Moan, you had Vinnie Curry, you had Conor McManus, you had Paul McElroy. You had a pedigree of a team right up the centre. Was very, very good. You had the Colin Greenans, you had Fergal Moan. You had different players that had good experience, both on county panels and not on county panels. And I have to say now, it was a very enjoyable time. And I suppose the boys put in an awful lot of effort, and they got a lot from it. The biggest problem, I suppose, the disappointment I would have with Clontarf would be that we lost out to an Ulster club because our boys were too busy with the county. And by the time they came back and finished, they were mentally and physically drained, and it left a situation you couldn't give the club as good a run as you'd like to give it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, obviously, the Monaghan Club Championship was always, from a Cavan watching on, it was always very competitive. Great teams, of all Emmy Vale and other teams, very competitive. So what did you make of kind of 4 senior championships with Clontarf, a serious achievement, Declan, against some very competitive teams?
Well, you had Blaney, Scottstown, Ballabay always knocking at the door, and there's some great bravery over the years. We were coming up short at different times, but we were very lucky to win a number of championships. And even when I wasn't involved, the lads went on to win other championships as well, because they had a great set and they had a great mindset. And, they always wanted to improve themselves. They always wanted to be ahead of the posse. They were always eager to learn. And from my perspective, they were a pleasure to train and coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose four championship medals, and then further on from that success, you won a junior championship with Emmy Vale, and you won an Ulster title with them. So, as the old saying goes, success breeds success, Declan, and you really got a winning culture instilled with yourself and every team that you were involved with.
Well, listen, I brought good people with me and surrounded myself with good people, and we put things in place that to maximise the potential of all players. This is all about creating an environment where a player can feel happy and that he puts himself in a position to perform at his best, and that he wants to be there and he enjoys being there. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose kind of making it an enjoyable kind of place for our players. And I suppose, Declan, obviously, looking from the outside in, you're probably a player's manager. So to kind of create a kind of happy dressing room and that kind of winning culture, Declan, what are some of them things you kind of brought into dressing rooms to kind of create that winning culture and just, I suppose, to keep the players happy, to be on the pitch and to work with you?
Well, you have to be, number one, you have to know your players, because each player is different. Each player needs a different way of looking after them, etc. So you have to know your players, and you have to dig into a bit of what's happening outside football, that they're happy with it in the job, that they're in a good relationship, maybe whether it be male or female, that they're in a good relationship. And I suppose them things all make life a lot easier if you have a situation where he's happy in them circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, kind of touching on some of the players you did work with, the Moans and Conor McManus, and I suppose coaching the likes of Conor McManus for Clontarf, He obviously does a lot of stuff that he does in the field. He nearly can't coach. It's just probably what from within and the hard work he puts on. But what was it like to even coach like Connacht and Munster with Clontarf, Declan? Because as we all know, he's probably one of the best forwards in Ireland.
Connor, I was very lucky over my career that I've had some great players, and Connor's up there, one of the best forwards in the county, in the country that I have coached from that perspective. There's others as well, so I wouldn't like to pinpoint, say that he's any better than anybody else or anybody's any better than him. But what I would say is he is the talent, but he works very hard at his game. If you go down past the football field there, you'll see him with a bag of balls, shooting, practicing frees, practicing shooting right across the board. So he gets what he puts into it. He has the talent, and he has the brain, and he has the movement, he has the pace, he has both feet, he has all them things. But a big thing he does have is hard work. Yeah,
absolutely, and we know all about it. And so we can touch on to Monaghan football, Declan. Obviously, a nice wee rivalry with Cavan and Monaghan over the years, and we know all about each other. And I suppose Monaghan football at the minute, Declan, obviously with COVID going on, and unfortunately the Monaghan lads were caught kind of training, and obviously Seamus McEnany's over the team at the minute. So what are you making of the kind of the Monaghan itself at the minute? And obviously last year, I know we had your number, but are you impressed with the current state of affairs of Monaghan GAA?
I know Bandy's a good man. Bandy will bring in good people around him. He has Donny Buckley in this year. He has David McCaig from Scottstown, and they'll move forward. The players have been very fortunate that they've had good coaches like Ryan Porter and Malachy O'Rourke, people like that there. And every year they'll take something from every trainer that coaches them. And I suppose it'll be no different with Donny Buckley. And moving forward, yes, it was very disappointing the way Monaghan will maybe lose their home games and etc. But it'll galvanise the team as well, and it'll move them forward, because the break will do them the world of good, especially players like Conor McManus and Darren Hughes and Kieran Hughes, that they've played a lot of football, and I can see that break doing them the world of good and coming out all guns blazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose kind of some of the Ulster Championship wins Monaghan had, I think, was it 2013 and 2015. Obviously, the one in 2013, like, seriously impressive, and to kind of get the monkey off the back. And obviously, if you can remember that day well, like a serious win for yourselves, a great win against Donegal, and yeah, it was great times. Even McManus kicking scores for fun. So, what was it like kind of witness Monaghan win that Ulster title after so long, Declan?
It was unbelievable, because over this last 15 or 20 years, there's been a lot of work been put in at development squads, county minor teams, county under 21 teams. There was different trainers came in. There was the whole professional end of things moved on as well, regarding everything with the team. You know what I mean? Food was made better. Gear was made better, just everything. The environment was increased, that lads felt very comfortable in it. Lads that hadn't got jobs were put in jobs. I don't mean put in jobs, but they were helped out any way they could, right across the board. So there was a lot of work by a lot of people, not just particularly one or two, that got them where the Ulster Championship was, and it was a very, very, it was a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the Ulster Championship as well, Declan, like, it's by a mile, as everyone always knows, it's the most competitive province. And so what have you made like the Ulster Championship as a product the last few years, Declan? Like, the games are always very nip and tuck, and at the end of the day, you're looking at Tyrone, Donegal, ourselves, and Monaghan really being at the top drawer. But I suppose it's nice and competitive and enjoyable football to watch at the best of times, Declan.
It is, I suppose from the perspective of provincial competitions, it's one of the best out there, because it's very competitive. And I suppose going forward, nobody likes playing anybody in Ulster, because on any given day, anybody can beat anybody, as we've seen last year what happened. So from that perspective, it'll always be very competitive, and it'll always be dog eat dog. And, like all teams, and me as a manager, you do what you have to do to win the game, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose looking forward to it, as we were saying at the start, for Mana, not too bad of a draw, and obviously ourselves getting Tyrone. So, what way can you see this maybe year shaping up? Because obviously, if you lose, you're gone. There's no back door, so there's obviously pressure on Banty, and yeah, like it's an exciting challenge for him this year.
It is. There's pressure, but Banty revels on the pressure. Banty gets up in the morning for football, as well as his business and everything like this, and he revels on the pressure. And from that perspective, do you know what I mean? This is a challenge for him, and he's back for the second time, and I'm sure he would like to get a trophy this time. For all his efforts, etc. And it is a pressure situation. I was involved in one along with Colin Kyle back in 2003 and 2004, and you know, I seen firsthand what's involved, and we had some great times that time as well. And we were very unfortunate. We won the McKenna Cup when it went to an Ulster final in the under-21s, and Tyrone beat us. Sean Kavanagh got pulled down for a penalty in the last couple of minutes to win the game by 2 points. And we went on to beat the All-Ireland champions that year, Armagh. But unfortunately, we done everything but put the ball over the bar against Down in Casement Park to get to an Ulster final.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose when you can look at the 4 provinces as well, Declan, and obviously you've worked with Dublin lads and kind of seen them go about their business, and obviously Leinster's a real dead duck at the minute. So isn't it probably a pity when you have the likes of Kildare and Meath, good footballing counties, Dublin so dominant? So, what have you made of maybe Leinster? Like, what do you think can be done maybe to fix the ongoing problem within Leinster?
I don't think there's an awful lot can be done. I think this is going to be about for a while, and it's up to everybody to get their own house in order. You know, from development squads, you know, how your players are involved. You know what I mean? Do they go on and represent at university? What's happening? Are they not making their places in university teams, school teams, etc.? Knock on the door of Hogan Cups. All them things have to fall into place first before you can be knocking at the door at senior inter-county level. And you know, it's like when Tyrone won the 3 All-Irelands. Before they did that, they won a couple of minors and the one under 21s. You know, you have to start from the bottom up, and that's where Dublin's ahead of the posse at the minute in all the work they've done at academy-wise and development squads in Dublin. I seen firsthand what work to do and how diligent they are in everything that they do.
Yeah, and just professional outfit in everything they really do. And I suppose I was remarking on a podcast a few weeks ago as well, Declan. Like it's such a pity that the kind of the rivalries within Leinster are really not there at the minute. Like Dublin and Meath, and I don't know, Dublin Kildare, Meath Kildare, like rivalries like that. And we've seen in the last couple of Leinster finals that they've just been dead ducks, and Dublin have been winning by 15 plus points. So wouldn't it just be great if maybe a new team come up in Leinster and could give Dublin a good rattle, and even we could see the likes of Dublin Meath rivalry come into play again, Declan?
Oh yeah, well I think teams are getting closer to Dublin. In fairness, Dublin can't go on forever. I suppose from the perspective of, you see, if your Tyrones, your Donegals, do you know what I mean? Any of the Division 1 teams are starting to maybe get the measure of each other, and things starting to level out right across the board. So if you're going to have a situation where you're going to be competitive in Leinster, Meath seem to be going in the right direction. Kildare are sort of levelled out. They're not sort of moving. They're neither going up or going down. And then you have other teams in Leinster, and they're 10, 15 points off the measure, and that's it.
Yeah, geez, and it's hard to watch a lot of times, and it's just a pity there's not a whole pile that can be done, as you say. And if you can look at the other provinces as well, Connacht, Mayo, Galway, Roscommon, obviously the teams coming to the fore and there, but you know, what do you think the crack is in Connacht? Like, can you see Pádraig Joyce's Galway being strong again this year? I know COVID came at the wrong time for them, so can you see much of a bite from Galway and Mayo this year, Declan?
If Pádraig Joyce gets his time and people are patient with him, you'll have a very exciting team to look at coming forward, because Pádraig Joyce, I admired him as a player, but I also know him to speak to him as a friend, and I suppose from their perspective, just to listen to him, to watch how he operates, etc. I have no doubt that he'll be knocking on the door in the Connacht Championship.
Yeah, and Mayo as well. Obviously, All-Ireland final last year in the 2020 final. Obviously, Dubs getting over the line again. So, what do you think Mayo can maybe do to maybe get that scalp, win that All-Ireland, Declan? Or what do you think? Obviously, you've been involved with loads of teams, and what do you think is wrong with Mayo, and why can't they itch that scratch?
It's just not good enough on the day, and they've been very, very close, very, very close. But game management has been their thing. And unfortunately, they had a situation where, some team selections as well didn't work out for them and put extra pressure on the team, etc., going forward. And I suppose the best way of looking at it, a good manager can win you in All-Ireland, and a bad manager can lose you in All-Ireland. And I suppose the perspective I'd love to say at the minute there, that Donegal team with Jim McGuinness over at the minute, because I think they have a serious set of players at the minute to challenge going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose we can look at the other provinces as well. Munster, Kerry had that blip against Cork last year. Can you see another sting in the tail from this Kerry team? Peter Keane, of course, in charge of Kerry. So, later with talents, Dave Clifford leading the line. So, Kerry, Declan, can they pose a threat to this Dublin dominance?
Of course, that Kerry's thereabouts. They got caught last year, and I suppose from their perspective, they'll be really, really very competitive, and they'll be knocking on the door when the business time of the year comes about.
Yeah, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And I suppose we can touch on to your role in the CPA, the Club Players Association, and obviously you and a lot of gentlemen got that set up. And I suppose it's like anything else. The club, obviously, it's where it starts and finishes, and it's probably been shafted at the minute in the south because there's no real roadmap and no September. But I think lads should be at least led back to training. There's obviously a lot of frustration still there at the minute. So the reason behind the CPA, Declan, and what was the thinking behind it all?
I suppose from being involved in everyday football, I was fed up with the fixtures. You didn't know, your season wasn't planned out. You were waiting on to see when your county team was out of Ulster or out of the All-Ireland campaign. You were waiting. You couldn't plan a holiday. You had a situation where your games then were being flooded into an area of the year that just. I suppose the best way of putting it is that it wasn't your best weather. You were playing games when the weather was poor. Do you know what I mean? As far as what the CPA stood for, they just wanted to fix the fixtures, and I think along with the GPA, along with the pandemic, which made a difference as well because it gave a reality check to everybody, it made a big difference. I was very fortunate to have a very good group of people that I pinpointed to take on the job. Micheál Briody as chairman, Liam Griffin, Joe Passmore. There was different individuals, and they were really good skill set. And I suppose I was in it for a fair bit of the time. Unfortunately, I had ill health, and I went into hospital for about 8 or 10 weeks, and I had to sit back and watch it foretold. But I was very proud to see that we definitely made a difference. And when the GPA came out and said that, listen, they want a split season, that was the icing on the cake, because they have more power than anybody in this country, if they only realise it, because without them, you don't have football.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, guys, this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website for all your retro gear needs and wants. And yeah, that's it. It's great to see an organisation kind of like the CPA kind of get set up, Declan, and obviously can try to go from strength to strength, because would you be of the opinion the club players at the best of times in Ireland are shafted, Declan?
They have been up until now, is the best way of putting it. But I definitely see there's a good future going forward where you'll have a good balance. You'll not be starting your training as earlier in the year. Do you know what I mean? Instead of teams going out in November, December to get ready for games in March, now you could have a situation the teams mightn't start to March. Do you know what I mean? There's 4 months of downtime. You're not going to have a situation where you're going to be overtraining. The games to training ratio is just an absolute joke. And for the first time last year, with the club scene and with the county scene, they had games every week, and it was far more enjoyable. Players enjoyed it, and that's what it's all about. And that's the way it has to be kept for going forward.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is it probably just a bit of understanding for the club players within Ireland? And as you were saying, the GPA have a serious amount of power, and if they just use it really. But with the club scene, I always say it like if there'd be no county without the club. So Declan, should there really be with me and everyone that's involved with the club, should we really be shown more respect for what we are getting, Declan?
We are, but we are supposed to talk through our county board officials, and we don't. People go to meetings and I don't know what to be listening to or what to be doing at meetings, and then they don't bring it back to your club and they don't discuss it at the club, and then it's a recipe for disaster. And we got our eyes opened when we went to Connacht a couple of times, and people there, and there was a couple of people sleeping down at the back. There was a couple of people there to, what's the best? They were condescending towards the CPA in their comments during the Congress. You know what I mean? There's a very, very needs to be a reality check at the top to the bottom that the club player matters big time, because you might have 10,000 county players, but you have 100,000 club players.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I obviously was casting a good eye in the Cavan Club Championship last year, and you took the reins of Ballyhaise, yourself and your brother Enda. What did you make of the Cavan Club Championship, and obviously working with the Ballyhaise lads? I
really enjoyed it, being honest, because I like the way that every week that you had a situation where the draw was made every week for the championship. You didn't know who you were going to be beating, and games came thick and fast every week. And then the top 4 or top 8 went into a draw, and it was 8 against, or 1 against 8, 2 against 7, that sort of thing. And it was a very enjoyable championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Ballyhaise lads, a very committed bunch of lads, a lot of talent down there. And I know Stephen Smith, Kevin Tyrion, boys like that very, very well, great players. What was it like to work with all them lads, and very committed a bunch of guys, Declan?
They worked very hard, but in fairness, because of the COVID, we didn't get as much time coaching with them that we would have liked, because we came in, then the next thing there was COVID, and you weren't really coaching because games was happening every week. You weren't really coaching. You were just managing injuries, that you weren't going to get injuries, etc. So you weren't getting as much coaching done as you would have liked with them. But from that perspective, Ballyhaise will be very hard to beat this year, because Ballinea was the team that they had to beat last year, and Cuhullians, they handled Cuhullians, but Cuhullians will be the team they have to beat this year. But they're well fit to beat them. They beat them last year, and there's no reason why they won't beat them this year, because also they're 5 to 10 points better team than most of the other team that's in the intermediate. So they're knocking on the door, and if they do get up senior, they'll do well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the standard of football in the Intermediate Championship, and obviously if you were comparing it to the Monaghan Intermediate Championship as well and Senior Championship, what did you make of the standard in the Intermediate Championship?
No, it was good. It definitely was good. There's no doubt about it. We were very lucky that we played maybe 3 out of our 6 games in Kingspan. And you know what I mean? If you couldn't play football in it, you couldn't play anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? So fantastic facility.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably got to the point he'll shoot us if we don't mention him. Your great brother Enda. He's a good Man United fan, and I'm always in regular contact with him. Enda, he's a great goalkeeper coach, and obviously, I suppose Chuck, he has get on fierce well, and he's a good man.
He has. Enda's anywhere I went, Enda has been with me. It's just a pity I hadn't got him in DCU, because that's one thing we hadn't got that time, was a goalkeeping coach, but we had a good goalkeeper called Stephen Cluxon. So
he's not bad. He's okay.
Yeah, so I suppose from that perspective, but no, Enda's very good at what he does, and very well got with whoever he works with, and He was involved when Monaghan were winning their Ulster titles there as well. So he's a good CV to go anywhere he wanted to go. But he has been very loyal to me, that has went to teams that I was involved with down through the years, and I appreciate that with him. Just a pity I hadn't him in DCU, because he would have what he would have learned from working with Stephen Cluxton, and you know what I mean, moving forward, and all them lads, he would have really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I suppose the role of goalkeeping coach, Declan, like obviously a lot of counties have the goalkeeper coach in, so it's a very important. It's as important as the manager. So how important is a goalkeeper coach within football and squad?
Very, very important in my eyes. Do you know what I mean? 90% of teams don't have one, but you'll find over the next 5 years it'll become a necessity, because your kick-outs, your one-to-one goalkeeping, your shot stopping, you've been I suppose been in charge of your defence. You know what I mean? All that type of thing, and that comes with confidence. And the more confidence a goalie has and receives from having a good goalkeeping coach, the better for everybody.
Yeah, 100%, without a really shadow of a doubt. And I suppose we can touch on to the glorious DCU days. Obviously, I was on to a couple of lads last week, and this is probably when the podcast gets a bit scary for them. So you tagged on a lot of Sigerson Cups with DCU. Enjoyable times for you, Declan, and stars 30 teams.
Loved it, every minute of it, from the first day to the last day. Really enjoyed it. And it was a joy to see so many players. You know, at that time we had a vision that DCU hadn't won a Sigerson. We had a vision that we would win a Sigerson with what we have, along with some graduates that we attempted to come to the university. But we also wanted to build one from the bottom up by winning fresher All-Irelands, intermediate All-Irelands, and then go on and win Sigerson. So we achieved both goals. And my job was to identify talent, go and seek what the talent was, see had it the pedigree, see it had the mentality, see had it had the academics, and even some of the players, what we done as well, we took them to do their Leaving Cert in Dublin. And do you know what I mean? Pierce Hanley was one of them, who went on to the AFL. Kieran Hughes from Monaghan, Philly McMahon was one of them, and they got into a course, and to see them getting an education, do you know what I mean? You talk about the good days in DCU, but to see so many boys that we brought into the DCU setup going on and graduating and getting a degree was very positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose you were referencing the Sigerson Cup wins for DCU, and I always mention Sigerson Cup. Very hard competition to win, because you're up against like UCD, UJ, lots of good teams involved in Sigerson Cup, Declan. So how special of a feeling was it to win all them Sigerson Cups and coach some of the best players we've ever seen?
Oh, it was interesting. It was you were made feel very welcome. A lot of the players that we had were new players in the block. They weren't necessarily on senior panels or anything like that, but they were the creme de la creme of talent. And my job was to manage, as well as coach them on the field, my job was to manage their academic side as well, to make sure that they got their degrees or etc. But other than that, we had our sports science department headed up by Paul O'Connor, who done a lot of work on that end of things. Julie Davis as the strength and conditioning coach. She's now with Kieran McGeady in Armagh. She was there for 3 years as well. And I suppose we had a great setup. The lads come in. It was like Bernard Brogan described it. It was like the Manchester United Academy, because the boys stayed together, trained together, practiced together, went to college together, and socialised together. And it was some setup. And it all came about as well from the perspective that we were very fortunate to get a sponsorship deal with Bank of Ireland as well, and that really set us on the road to achieve what we wanted to achieve. and the DCU University could see what we were doing, because it was really flagshipping DCU throughout the country. It was really, people were starting to talk about DCU. They were, instead of being on the third choice in university, they were starting to be on your first choice. There was a lot of positive things happen that went hand in hand with the sporting success.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you say, like the Manchester United Academy is good as, like, and we reference players, Shawnee Johnson, Conor Mortimer, Bernard Brogan, Paul Flynn, Cluxton, all these great players, Declan. So when you're naming a 1 to 15 team, how in the name of God did you do it over the years?
I know, Niall was with me as well, Niall Mina, and you did what you have to do. And we had some, I really enjoyed the freshers end of it as well, because they were coming in and they were buzzing, absolutely buzzing, looking to learn, move forward. And do you know what I mean? We won a number of fresher All-Irelands, and they were very exciting as well. And I suppose from the perspective of, we had players like James McCarthy, Johnny Cooper, Dean Rock. They were on Robert Hanley from Mayo was the goalkeeper. Michael Boyle was in there as well. Do you know what I mean? David Kelly, you had Shawnee, you had Bernard Brogan, you had Brian Cullen. Do you know what I mean? I could go on and on and on about players' names, and it was a joy to be in around them players.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I suppose, like, the current state of affairs with all the kind of college football and obviously the Sigerson Cup, everyone loves watching it. And I suppose you, Jay, kind of probably done something similar, like kind of getting the players down and all. But like, I think a lot of colleges these days seem to be getting a lot of abuse with that. Some of them lads are really coming down to play the football and maybe not get the education, just come down and just try to win a Sigerson for a college. But what do you make of all that? I suppose you, Jay, kind of getting the players down, or what's your opinion? Maybe can it just get players to win a Sigerson competition, or has it gone a bit, salty?
I think, in fairness now to the current universities, they're all trying to get the students through academics. And do you know what I mean? People want more than football. Do you know what I mean? Somebody's not going to come to a university from the perspective of playing football. Yes, you may think so, but at the end of the day, they have their career to think of. So they need to be academically fit to get through the course. And from that perspective, a lot of work has to be done by a lot of individuals. You know what I mean? We set up grinds and tutorials for students, you know what I mean, that were maybe struggling on some subjects or etc. But it was all done, and it was all done in good faith. And it was well received. And I would feel that most universities are doing that now. They're mindful of what's happened outside the career, because in fairness, the GPA is looking in now, and you don't get away with anything like you used to.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I suppose, like, you obviously referenced you were the director of the sports academy at DCU. So what did you make of all that, Declan? Obviously a very high profile job, and kind of getting the best and elite players into DCU.
It was. I created a network throughout Ireland to identify players and bring them in, and it was very enjoyable. It was, I suppose, we had up to 60 players staying in campus. Do you know what I mean? That we had to look after. Do you know what I mean? And that come from freshers up to Sigerson, and there was a lot of work involved in it. But from my perspective, it worked out very well, and we were very successful, and I really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, my time came up short because a good friend of mine, or a student as well, Darren Sutherland, took his own life at that particular time, and I actually took it very bad at that time, and that's why I stepped away.
Yeah, absolutely. We were going to reference the great man there. That was the next piece I was going to touch on. And Darren Sutherland, Declan, tragic circumstances, a fantastic athlete, a fantastic man, and what more can you say, really?
Not an awful lot. Hit me hard at the time, hit a lot of people hard. Darren was very well got throughout the university, was very well got by his lectures, etc. I remember being involved, I remember being overseeing his contracts, I remember being involved in his day-to-day activities. Do you know what I mean? I was helping out any way I can. We had his first professional fight was in DCU, and it was packed to the rafters with everybody. And he would only had 3 or 4 fights after that. But unfortunately, just depression got the better of him, and it all came to a sudden end.
Yeah, unfortunately, and like that's it. That's probably for the times we're in it as well, Declan. And we did kind of touch on the start with support services and all. But like, do you feel like, I know Darren, the peak of his power was healthy. You were giving him a hand with everything he was doing. Do you feel at that time for Darren, was there enough kind of support services that he could reach out for to get help, Declan?
Well, that was something that'll always annoy me. Do you know what I mean? Because you always say to yourself, "Could you've done more?"
Yeah, absolutely, 110%. And we're after referencing some amazing players there for DCU. That, like, I think Conor Mortimer was part of that kind of panel as well. So what was it like to kind of coach some of them elite forwards? And
Conor came in as a mature student, and Conor's a good story from the perspective. He came in as a mature student, which was 23 years of age. He'd done sports science. And passed it, got a degree out of it, followed me to Jordanstown and got a master's in sports management down there. So people would have been sceptical about how's Conor McMortimer in college. He really excelled both academically as well as his football career, that nobody knew that he had the academics that he had, but he really shone through, and he worked out really well, and there's a real good storyline on it. And you know what I mean? You talk about Conor McManus with the bag of balls, Conor Mortimer had his bag of balls, Bernard Brogan, all these boys had their own footballs, and you'd see them down in the DCU grounds tipping away. You know, there's another great player there from Louth, Paddy Keenan, magnificent player. All them boys, they really worked very, very hard at their game.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
James, do you remember James McCarthy?
Not a bad player.
Yeah, unbelievable player. The go-to man, as they say. He's serious player.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of what I'm touching on as well, Declan. Like how proud of you, how proud of you are of these lads, because they excelled for their counties, they won numerous titles, All-Stars, All-Irelands in their various counties, and I suppose when you're looking on the TV at them, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, that's a lot of my work put into them lads.
I have some great memories, unbelievable memories. And from my perspective, you know what I mean, I'll never forget them. And you know what I mean? And in my times when I'm maybe not feeling the best, I look back on them things, and I look through my scrapbooks and look through paper cuttings, and I look through trophies and gifts that I got from players, etc. You know, just nice acknowledgements of taxes, and you know what I mean? Just acknowledge. I remember getting texts from players that won All-Irelands thanking me for my contribution. And that really, really, really makes it all worthwhile. That really makes it. And even if a fella wins a county final and he doesn't forget about who coached him as a juvenile, who coached him when he went to university, who coached him when he and his county minors, county under-21s, people never forget, so they don't. People never forget.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. And I suppose we can ask the kind of hard-hitting questions regarding all that kind of DCU setup. So, no better man to probably ask. So, within the DCU setup, Declan, who would have been the best trainer?
Who would have been the best trainer? That is a good question. Can't answer it. Too many. There's too many. Yeah. Unbelievable. I couldn't answer that question. Yeah. Everyone was click, click, click. Yeah. Everybody wanted to know as much as possible. And if they seen somebody else getting an edge on them, they'd be saying, well, what's he doing different to me? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Worst trainer?
It's still a question I can't answer. I'm sorry, John. It's very bleak information I'm giving you, but they were all really good trainers. They were all really good trainers, and they wanted to be the best they could be.
That's a very politically correct answer.
Well, we went on it's like we're on. We went to a couple of Portugal trips out to Browns in Portugal, and we done 5 days of training, and we had one night off where the boys went out and had a good time. And then 5 days, they trained twice a day, and we done a lot of video work as well and that type of thing. And do you know what I mean? They were meticulous in everything done, and everybody's doing it. There was no problem. Just keep going. As much as you wanted them to do, they done.
Yeah, absolutely. Born winners. Longest in the shower?
Conor Mortimer.
Biggest mommy's boy?
Biggest mommy's boy. Bernard Brogan.
Worst dresser?
Robert Hanley.
Best dresser?
Brendan Egan.
Brendan Egan. Super.
Brendan Egan from Sligo.
Oh, from Sligo, yeah, great player, a terrific player. And I suppose kind of to give a bit of advice to the future generation, but there's a young kind of Declan Brennan starting off in his coaching journey and kind of getting involved as much as humanly possible. What kind of bits of advice, Declan, would you give to a young Declan Brennan making that jump towards management or GA at all?
Well, not making a jump at 22 or 23 years of age, mad in the head, absolutely mad in the head. But anybody that's thinking of getting into management, you've got to get good people around you, number one. And number two is you have to trust your players, and you have to build a respect that they respect you and you respect them. That's the biggest things that you need around you.
Absolutely. And I suppose just to wrap up, and if there is kind of people kind of struggling out there, Declan, and obviously with your story with depression, so what advice would you give to maybe, and I know a lot of people are struggling at this current minute of time, unfortunately, but what advice kind of would you give someone struggling and to kind of make their dark days a bit brighter?
Make sure and talk. Talk is the most important thing, because no matter how bleak it is, there's nothing that can't be sorted. And I know that. Do you know what I mean? I'm at my best when I'm on the sideline or I'm coaching or any of that kind of stuff. I absolutely revel in it. And I never missed a day at coaching or match or anything to do with my depression, because I revel in it. It's only when you get into your quiet times and you have a situation that you're not doing very much that actually depression can hit you most. So what I would say to anybody is keep talking. I'm very lucky. I have a few good friends, Tom Wigan, Kevin Carraher, Martin Gormley. You know, there's different other friends I have, and they've been very good. I have a very good family, very good son and daughter, and my father and mother, thanks be to God, are still alive, and they're good as well. They're very good to me. So if you have good people around them, talk to them, use them, and move forward. And there is essential services out there that you can utilise, and to utilise them, because I'm not ashamed about my condition is like somebody with diabetes, somebody that has a broken leg. I'm not ashamed of my condition. And from my perspective, I have to just live with it. Yes, I couldn't accept it, but when you do accept it, you have to try and live with it and move on the best you can.
Absolutely. Sterling advice. And to wrap up, Declan, you've seen a lot of players in your time, coached a lot of players, seen a lot of players, and been there, done that, Declan. So if you were to name your top 5 players of all time you've seen so far, who would they be?
Don't ask me that question. No, unfortunately, I have had the pleasure of working with some fantastic players, even in Jordanstown. Conor McManus was in Jordanstown, Matthew Donnelly, Brennan Donaghy from Armagh, Kevin Dias from Armagh, Keelan O'Boyle from Derry. Do you know what I mean? Even down there, I had the pleasure of working with some great players down there as well. So from my perspective, I couldn't name you a top 5. It'd be an impossible job for me to do, because I've worked with that many good players throughout my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Declan Brennan, that was an absolute pleasure. Thanks a million for joining me on the JMac Podcast this week. And of course, this podcast is sponsored by orgaretro.com. Check the website out for all your retro gear needs. Declan, pleasure. Thanks a million. Look after yourself. And I'll not stay up on him because there's too much variety there.
and I've been honest, if there's anybody out there, because people do come to me and want to talk about depression, and maybe somebody has a son or a daughter or anything like that there, if anybody wants to come and talk to me, I'm available. There's not a problem. I'll help any way I can.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, Declan, look after yourself.
All right.
Thank you.